The city was alive that afternoon. Cars moved slowly through the busy streets. Horns echoed between tall buildings, and people hurried across sidewalks, trying to reach their destinations before the day ended. Street vendors called out to passing customers. Traffic lights changed in steady rhythm, and the sound of life filled every corner of downtown. For most people, it was just another ordinary day. But sometimes, the smallest moments happen on the most ordinary days, and sometimes those moments change everything. Near the intersection of Maple Avenue and 7th Street, a young girl stood waiting at the crosswalk. Her name was Nia Carter. Nia was 16 years old, a high school student who had just finished classes for the day. She wore a backpack slung over one shoulder and headphones resting around her neck, though no music was playing. Her eyes moved calmly across the busy street, watching the crowd move back and forth. Nia wasn't in a rush. She never liked rushing. Her mother always told her something important while she was growing up. Pay attention to people around you. Kindness starts with noticing. It was a simple lesson, but Nia took it seriously. While others stared at their phones or hurried past strangers without looking up, Nia noticed things. She noticed the man struggling with heavy grocery bags. She noticed the child trying to keep up with her mother. And on that particular afternoon, she noticed someone else. Across the street stood an elderly woman. She looked fragile, almost lost in the crowd. Her gray hair moved slightly in the wind, and she leaned heavily on a cane. Every time the traffic light changed, people rushed across the crosswalk quickly, leaving her behind. Twice she tried to step forward. Twice she stopped. Cars were turning quickly, and the crowd was impatient. No one stopped. No one slowed down. Most people didn't even see her. But Nia did. She watched carefully as the woman looked left, then right, clearly unsure if she could make it across the street in time. The traffic signal began counting down again. 10, 9, 8. People started crossing quickly, but the elderly woman didn't move. Nia made a decision. Without thinking too much about it, she stepped away from the crowd and walked toward the woman. "Excuse me," Nia said gently as she approached. The elderly woman turned slightly, surprised. "Oh, hello, dear. Do you need help crossing the street?" Nia asked. The woman looked relieved, but also a little embarrassed. "Well, yes," she admitted softly. "These streets move faster than I do these days." Nia smiled warmly. "That's okay. We'll go together." At that moment, the light turned green for pedestrians again. The crosswalk signal began counting down. Nia gently held the woman's arm, matching her pace exactly, not rushing, not pulling, just walking beside her, step by step, car by car passing. The city continued moving around them, but something unexpected was happening. People started noticing. A man waiting for a taxi paused. A woman holding a coffee cup looked up. A cyclist slowed down, because in a city that was always moving quickly, someone had stopped to help. Halfway across the street, the elderly woman looked at Nia. "You're very kind," she said. Nia shrugged slightly. "My mom says we should help when we can." The woman smiled. "Well, your mother raised you right." They continued crossing slowly. Meanwhile, something else was happening, something Nia didn't realize yet. At the corner of the street stood a news van. A local journalist had been covering traffic conditions nearby. His camera operator had been recording random city footage for a segment about daily life downtown, and accidentally, their camera had captured everything. The moment Nia walked over, the moment she offered help, the moment they began crossing the street together. At first, the cameraman didn't think much about it. But then the journalist noticed something. "Keep recording," he said quietly, because the scene felt different. It felt genuine, not staged, not dramatic, just real kindness in the middle of a busy city. By the time Nia and the elderly woman reached the other side of the street, more people were watching than she realized. The woman turned toward her. "Thank you," she said again. "I don't think I would have made it across alone." Nia smiled. "I'm glad I could help." The woman studied her face for a moment. Then she said something unexpected. "You know, not many people stop anymore." Nia didn't know what to say to that. So she simply replied, "Well, someone should." The woman nodded slowly. Then added, "You might not realize it now, but what you did today matters." Nia thought she was just being polite, but the woman's words carried a strange certainty, as if she knew something Nia didn't. Meanwhile, across the street, the journalist lowered his headset and looked at the footage. Playing on the camera monitor, he leaned forward. "Wait," he said. "Replay that." The cameraman rewound the clip. They watched again as Nia helped the woman cross the street. The journalist smiled slightly. This is the story. Because sometimes, in a world full of loud headlines and dramatic news, the most powerful story is a simple act of kindness. But what no one knew yet was that this moment was only the beginning, and what happened next would surprise the entire city. The next morning, the city woke up like it always did. Traffic filled the roads before sunrise. Coffee shops opened their doors. Office buildings lit up floor by floor, and people rushed through their routines, without expecting anything unusual to happen. But somewhere inside a small local news station, something very unusual was about to go public. The journalist who had recorded the moment the day before sat at his desk, reviewing the footage again. He had watched it several times already. Each time it felt the same. Real, honest, powerful in a quiet way. In a world where most news stories were about problems, conflict, and controversy, this one felt different. It was a moment of kindness that wasn't planned, wasn't recorded for attention, and wasn't meant to go viral. But it had something special. The journalist turned to his editor. "We should post this," he said. The editor looked at the screen. On it, Nia could be seen gently helping the elderly woman across the street while the busy city moved around them. No drama, no music, just a simple act of humanity. The editor nodded. "Post it." Within minutes, the video went online. At first, only a few people saw it. Then dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. And then something happened that no one expected. The video exploded across social media. People started sharing it everywhere. Comments began flooding in. This restored my faith in people. We need more kindness like this. Who is this girl? Someone find her. She deserves recognition. Within a few hours, the video had been viewed hundreds of thousands of times. By the afternoon, it crossed 1 million views. But the most surprising thing was happening outside the internet. People in the city were talking about it. At offices, in schools, on buses, inside cafes. Everyone seemed to be sharing the same video. The city had found a story it didn't expect, and it loved it. Meanwhile, Naya had no idea any of this was happening. She was sitting in her classroom during math class, trying to focus on a problem written on the board. Her phone buzzed quietly in her backpack. Then again, and again, and again. After class ended, she checked it. Dozens of messages, then more. Her best friend had texted her first. "Naya, are you on the news?" Nia frowned. "What?" She opened another message. "Girl, you're trending right now." Another one. "That video of you helping the woman is everywhere." Confused, Naya clicked the link someone sent. The video opened. She stared at the screen. There she was, helping the elderly woman cross the street. The moment replayed again and again. Nia blinked in disbelief. What? Within minutes, more students in the hallway started noticing. "Wait, that's her! That's the girl from the video. Isn't that Nia?" Suddenly, people were smiling at her. Some even clapped lightly as she walked down the hallway. Nia felt overwhelmed. She wasn't used to attention like this. She hadn't done it for recognition. She had just helped someone who needed it. But the city saw something bigger in that moment. Back at the news station, the story was growing even more. The journalist had decided to air the clip during the evening news. As the broadcast began, millions of viewers watched the segment. The reporter spoke calmly. Yesterday afternoon, in the middle of a busy downtown intersection, a simple act of kindness reminded us all of something important. The video played on screen. Again, viewers watched Nia walking up to the elderly woman. Again, they saw her slow down and match her pace. Again, they saw kindness in action. But what happened next surprised even the journalist, because the newsroom received a phone call, and the caller was someone unexpected. It was the elderly woman from the video. Her name was Margaret Ellis, and she had something to say. "I saw the video," she told them, "and I think people should know something about that girl." The journalist leaned forward. "What would you like people to know?" Margaret's voice was warm but serious. "That young girl didn't just help me cross the street." There was a pause. She reminded me of the kind of person the city used to celebrate. The journalist asked gently, "What do you mean?" Margaret took a slow breath. "I mean, she deserves more than just a viral video." And then she said something that surprised everyone listening. "I want to meet her again." But that wasn't the only surprise. Because Margaret Ellis was not just any elderly woman. She was someone the entire city knew. Someone respected. Someone who had quietly helped build many community programs across the city over the last 40 years. And once people realized who she was, the story grew even bigger. By the end of the evening, the city wasn't just talking about kindness anymore. They were asking a new question. Who exactly was the girl who helped Margaret Ellis? And more importantly, what would happen when they met again? By the next morning, the entire city seemed to know the story. The video had now reached millions of views. News stations across the region had picked it up, and people everywhere were sharing the same clip. The quiet moment when a teenage girl helped an elderly woman cross a busy street. But what people didn't know yet was that something even bigger was about to happen. At City Hall, phones had been ringing nonstop. Messages were coming in from community leaders, local organizations, teachers, and residents. Everyone was talking about the same thing: the girl in the video and the woman she had helped. When the public learned that the elderly woman was Margaret Ellis, the story suddenly carried even more weight. Margaret Ellis was known throughout the city as someone who had spent decades helping others. She had helped fund libraries in underserved neighborhoods, created programs for seniors, and supported youth education projects long before most people knew her name. Yet she had always stayed out of the spotlight. And now, somehow, a simple moment at a crosswalk had brought her back into it. But Margaret wasn't interested in attention. She was interested in Nia. That afternoon, the news station arranged a meeting. They invited Nia and her mother to come to a small community center downtown, the same building where Margaret had helped launch one of her first programs many years earlier. Nia felt nervous as she walked inside. The room wasn't crowded, but there were cameras, reporters, and a few community leaders standing nearby. Her mother walked beside her, holding her hand for a moment. "You did something beautiful," her mother said softly. "Just be yourself." Across the room, Margaret Ellis stood waiting. When Nia saw her, she immediately recognized her. The same gentle smile, the same calm presence. But this time, people were watching. Nia walked up to her. "Hello again," Margaret said warmly. Nia smiled. "Hi, I didn't know everyone would be here." Margaret chuckled softly. "Neither did I." The reporters waited quietly as the two spoke. Then Margaret turned slightly toward the audience and said something that surprised everyone. "I asked to meet Nia again because people keep saying she did something extraordinary." She paused. "But the truth is, she did something simple." The room was silent. Margaret looked at Nia kindly. She noticed someone who needed help. Then she continued, "And that kind of kindness is becoming rare in busy cities like ours." Many people nodded. But Margaret wasn't finished. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small folder. Inside were documents. She handed them to Nia. Nia looked confused. "What is this?" Margaret smiled. "This city has many young people with potential," she said. "But sometimes they don't get the opportunities they deserve." She looked at the reporters briefly. "After seeing Nia, I realized something." The room leaned in. Margaret continued. "If someone this young understands kindness this deeply, imagine what she could do with support." Nia slowly opened the folder. Her eyes widened. Inside was a scholarship offer. A full education scholarship funded through one of Margaret Ellis's foundations. For Nia, the room went completely silent for a second. Then someone gasped quietly. Nia looked up, shocked. "Wait, this is for me?" Margaret nodded. "Yes." Nia shook her head slightly in disbelief. "But I didn't help you for this." Margaret smiled again. "I know. That's exactly why you deserve it." The room filled with applause. But the surprises didn't stop there. Because the mayor of the city, who had also been watching the story unfold online, had arrived quietly at the back of the room. He stepped forward. "I think the entire city would agree with something," he said. Everyone turned toward him. In a time when people often rush past one another, this young woman reminded us of what community really means. He looked at Nia. "So today we want to recognize you." The mayor handed her a certificate. But what he said next amazed everyone even more. "Starting this year," he announced, "our city will launch a new youth kindness initiative inspired by this moment." The reporters immediately started writing. Cameras flashed. People clapped again. But Nia stood there quietly, still processing everything. Just 2 days earlier, she had simply walked home from school. Now the entire city was talking about kindness because of her. Margaret leaned slightly closer and said softly, "You see, Nia, small actions create big waves." Outside the community center, people had gathered after hearing about the meeting. When Nia and Margaret walked out together, the crowd cheered. Not loudly like a concert crowd, but warmly, respectfully, because something about this story felt important. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. That night, the news headline across the city read, "A simple act of kindness inspires an entire city." And from that day forward, people remembered something important. Sometimes the moment that amazes everyone starts with someone simply choosing to help.